Today we'll be deep diving into Bira beverages and craft beer industry. Hope we are able to add value in your journey to pre-IPO investments. We have been receiving a ton of suggestions on the companies we should cover next, and a lot of companies are already there in the pipeline. We'll be starting off in a couple of minutes, and we are looking forward to your active participation.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining in on another Saturday evening. But today's subject is very in line with a Saturday evening, which is Bira beer. So in this series, as Nikunj would have introduced, we would have covered about three companies now, and today we are deep diving into Bira. So Bira has been a part of our portfolio since the last 2.5, 3 years. And it is actually operating in a very interesting space. So obviously, Alcobev is an amazing industry to have an investment in. It has given a great return to investors across. But specifically talking about Bira, why it is interesting is because it operates in a very niche segment inside the beer industry. So it operates in a craft beer come youth brand space. And in this presentation, we'll be covering the entire journey, right from the initiation, the uh, marketing strategies, the financials, the valuation, and it will be a data packed session. So let's get started. So how did Bira get started? So essentially, Bira's founder Ankur Jain was living in New York, and he had founded a health management startup called Reliant MD. And he had a brewery called Brooklyn Brewery close to his office. And every Saturday he would generally enjoy a craft beer there. And when he actually came back to India, he realized that there are no craft beer options in India easily available. And I think that is where the entire journey of Bira started, wherein the idea was to bring craft beer as a industry segment to India. And how this got started was Jen created a company called Serena Beverages, and he imported 20 cases of craft beer, and he sold them to various pubs and cafes in and around Delhi and Gurgaon. The response received by Jain was phenomenal, and that is how we realized that there is a huge demand for beer on tap and craft beer, apart from the monotonous beer which was already filled in the market with Heineken, Tuborg, and Kingfisher, and that's how Bira 91 started. So Bira initially only imported and distributed craft beer, and the imports were majorly from Belgium, but some was from Germany and US also. And this was up until I think around 2017, 2016 years. Since the last 5 years, Bira has actually set up its own manufacturing facilities. It has now more than five manufacturing facilities, majorly set up in and around Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. The latest one going live in this year itself in Gwalior. So this is how the background of the company was. Now, why is there a need for craft beer, and what is the difference between a craft beer and how does entire journey start? So I think how Bira started was they started selling fresh beer from tap to bars and restaurants. And they got an amazing response where there was a 25 times jump in sales of beer from the restaurants and bars which were having fresh beer from tap than from restaurants which were simply serving it in a bottle. Now, what was the reason? I think there were three reasons primarily which has been noted down. So one was definitely from fresh from tap has a much more fresher and a more authentic feel to the beer which is being served to the clients. Second is beer served in a glass is much cheaper than beer served in a bottle, because a bottle, as counterintuitive it sounds, is actually the largest part of the cost heads in a beer industry. So it actually accounts for a higher percentage of cost than what the actual liquor does. And third is increased visibility. So generally, beer bottles were stacked behind the beer counter, behind the bar counter, which were out of the public eye, and therefore there was no visibility. But tapped beer is actually placed on the bar counter itself, and it is right there front and center for the restaurateurs to actually enjoy. And this is how Bira's core hypothesis got validated by the market, and this is how they got started. So like we said, Bira actually started like an importer. So they used to import beer from Belgium majorly. Uh, and they used to then market it out to beers and clubs and distributors and wholesalers in India. But later, when he was able to secure funding to the tune of $1 million, he rebranded Bira into Bira 91, and he was able to set up a manufacturing facility in India itself. And now they are producing majority of the beer that is being sold under the B9 Beverages brand. One interesting fact about how the name Bira 91 came into being. So they actually wanted to name Bira 91 as Biru. And Biru had two connotations. One is it stood for brother in in Hindi. And along with that, in Japanese, Bira also referred to beer. 91 is actually the country code for India. And to show how local the beverage was, therefore they rebranded the entire thing as Bira 91. And what you would notice, one thing which is very interesting about Bira is a lot of focus has been given to branding and marketing all throughout. So just when the company started, Ankur Jain and his core team actually spent 9 months, uh, talking over, discussing, strategizing on how the marketing and the branding should be. And every bottle, every sponsorship they have done, every packaging that they have created has harped on a single brand thesis that the brand should ultimately be young, playful, and it should stray away from the monotonous beer brands which are dominant in the market at the moment. Now let's take a look at why craft beer industry is so interesting and overall beer industry as well. So in 2020, the entire beer industry was worth 37,000 crores. And in 2026, this is expected to go up to 66,000 crores. The growth rate comes for the overall beer industry as 9.2%. In the beer industry, a subset, which is the craft beer, wherein there is a play with flavors, or there is a play with colors, or there is a play with the freshness of the beer itself, that segment is supposed to grow at a 24% CAGR for the same period of 2026. And this is where we feel that Bira will have a huge edge as compared to the other incumbent beer players. If you compare this to a global global market scenario, so currently globally the beer market is worth close to $100 billion, and in 2026 it is expected to go up till 230 billion with a growth rate of close to 14.1%. Now, one more interesting nugget here. So, all the craft beer industry is growing by leaps and bounds, but Bira itself has grown even faster than the industry. And this is what we'll cover when we get to Bira's financials. So, what did Bira do differently? So, I think the major takeaway or the major thing which Bira did was it did not go with the regular beer which was available in the market, but it decided to create a lot of differentiation in terms of tastes and flavor. So, they came up with Bira White Ale, they came up with Bira Blonde, Bira Boom, Bira Wheat Beer, and all of these were very differentiated offerings from what was available prior to Bira's entry in the market. Second major point which Bira focused on was low alcohol content. So generally beers in the Indian space were having a ABV, which is alcohol by volume, of close to 8 to 9%. Bira started experimenting with drinks which had a much lower ABV of anywhere between 4.5 to 6%. They then went on to bring out new flavors which had ABV between 6 to 8. But the idea was to find a sweet spot wherein new uh, population could come in and first time beer drinkers could experience a less bitter product which had more flavoring. And this is how the entire low alcohol content beer or light beer phenomena took up. And this is completely disrupted with the new age urban Indian consumer purely starting with the new age beers and not starting with beers like Tuborg or Heineken or Kingfisher, which used to be the case earlier. And this entire strategy has played out extremely well for Bira, and it has actually become one of the biggest and fastest growing craft beers, not just in India but across the globe. So to speak about a little about the product portfolio, so this is how differentiated Bira's offering looks when you compare it to any of the incumbents beer offerings. So they have beer blonde summer lager, they have beer wheat strong. So this is a wheat beer. So generally beer is made from barley malt. But Bira experimented with wheat, and this has really launched two great products. So one is Bira White Wheat Ale and Gold Wheat Strong. And before Bira, there were very little options for a beer drinker in the wheat category. Right now, because of Bira's success in the wheat segment, Kingfisher has also launched its wheat beer, and that is also doing phenomenally well. This limited release was launched in the year FY 21-22, and this is a play on the local flavors of India. So this one is mango, this is IPA, and this is cocoa. So the idea, this is not planned to be a long-term release, but this is a limited release which will be active for a couple of months, and whatever plays out well for Bira will might get added to their permanent portfolio. Now, like we said, light beer has a different kind of a following in India, specifically because a large number of beer drinkers or large number of target audience for Bira is actually first-time drinkers. And so Bira Light, which has a ABV of just 4.5%, forms a very good initiation point for fresh beer drinkers. Now let's look at how Bira has raised investments and who are the current investors. So 2016 is when Bira actually raised its first round of investment, and that was from Sequoia and along with a couple of other angel investors. And these were all grade A angel investors, the founder of Dipinder Goyal Zomato, Ashish Dhawan from Chris Capital, and Kunal Bale from Snapdeal. In 2018, they raised another round of $50 million from Sofina. In 2019, they raised a $4.3 million round from Six Sense Ventures, which is again one of the most successful VC funds, which has backed majorly consumer facing brands. In 2019 itself, they raised another $10 million round for debt in the mode of a debt funding. And this was to basically increase its production capacity from 4 lakh to 1.7 million cases. In the latest round of funding, they raised a $30 million round from Kirin Holdings. Kirin is Japan's one of the largest integrated breweries, and they invested in 2021 to the tune of $30 million. So coming next to how has Bira killed it with marketing. So I think Bira has been very, very focused in its marketing efforts. It has tried to stay as a young, vibrant, colorful brand. Recently, they launched a marketing campaign called Make Play with Flavors, and that has done phenomenally well. Recently, they showed that a top of mind recall for Bira had gone up from I think 6% to close to 14%, which was only second in line from Qbog, post their latest marketing campaign. Along with this, one of the amazing feats which they achieved is that in 2019 they signed a 5-year partnership with ICC, wherein they get exclusive rights to serve Bira anywhere from all of the matches which are played for ICC, right from Melbourne to Lords. And this will give them not only a great marketing boost but also will help them support volumes as well. In the Indian context, Bira has been partnered with Delhi Capitals in the IPL brand, and they are one of the sponsors for Delhi Capitals also. Coming next to the financials. So Bira has a revenue of close to 450 crores in 2020, just to give you overall overall numbers. In 2021, they did a revenue which was very similar to their 2020 revenue, so it was close to 450 crores. But in 2020-22, they have posted a phenomenal result, which is almost twice of their previous year figures. So in quarter 4 FY22, they have done close to a 185 crore number, which was in FY20 close to 106 crore figure. In terms of volume, they have shown a 56% volume jump. March specifically has been a phenomenal month for them. So their March number is almost 3x of what their March revenue was in 2020. While in FY21 to FY22, the whole year figure is 1.7 times that of FY21. So this actually shows that all of the Bira's marketing efforts and global and geographical expansion, play with brands, marketing spends are actually bearing fruit as far as top line goes. So a 70% growth from year on year is really a phenomenal target. But one thing which investors should be of note here is FY21 also had an impact of COVID. So March, April, May for FI 2021 was severely impacted on account of COVID, and therefore FI 21 numbers might be a little deflated because of that impact. Now, considering where does all of this get Bira? So Bira is actually broken in the top five beer brands by volume, and it is actually in the top four beer brands by revenue. So the number one brand is obviously Kingfisher, followed by Tuborg, Budweiser, and Hayward's. But in terms of revenue, it is only behind Kingfisher, Tuborg, and Budweiser. In terms of manufacturing premise, they have actually opened five breweries up till now, and the number fifth brewery or the latest brewery in Gwalior went live this year, and this has expanded their overall overall manufacturing capacity to close to 2.2 million HLPA. Now let's get to numbers. So I think we had a understanding of how the entire space is playing out, how the industry is, how Bira has differentiated itself, what are its core offerings. Now let's come down to brass tacks and let's see what numbers Bira has posted. So in terms of volume in FY21, they had done close to a 4,000 million, 4,000, 4,000 cubic this thing, and in 2022 they have doubled that number by almost a 56% growth to 7,000. Their gross revenues have gone up from 455 crores to 787 crores. This has consequently been led with a increase in cost of materials. So I think the material cost has gone up phenomenally in line with the overall revenue. So I think revenue has gone up by I think 74%, and their even material cost have gone up by 78%. What is of note here is that their sales and marketing expense has almost gone 3x. And I think this is why so in 2021, they had actually curtailed their entire sales and marketing efforts because there were no offline events, there were no launches. But in FY 21-22, Bira has spent a lot of money on sponsoring a lot of events, tying up with a lot of leagues. They have created tap rooms across Bangalore. One of them has been rated as one of the top tap rooms as well. But this has all weighed down on their balance sheet, and this has led to their EBITDA to go from a negative 100 crores to a negative 217 crores. So this is, I think, a huge increase in the overall cost segment. So Bira, I think, to become profitable, they would have to really find out a way in which they are able to grow their top line without having such a large impact on their sales and marketing expenses. Apart from this, there were a couple of commentaries on their financials. So the brewery margins have steadied despite inflationary pressures, and there has been an improved state mix and improved realization. EBITDA margins have declined basically due to marketing and payroll costs. Coming next to how the competitive landscape for Bira is. So Bira, no doubt, was one of the front runners when it came to craft beer launching in India. But how does it play out now? How is the financial look now, and how is the competition come up? So there have been a number of launches since Bira took off, and a lot of them have also done well. We have listed a couple of them here. So Arbor Brewing Company, which is one of the oldest brewers, they had an outlet in Bangalore called ABC. They launched their own canned beer option, and this was under their own brand name called Arbor Brewing Company. White Rhino Brewing Company launched their own line of fresh lagers, and the entire idea was that this benefits from the wholesome of goodness of local ingredients. Kati Patang is one of the most recent beers which was launched not very long back, but they have done a phenomenal job as far as their launch goes. They have expanded and launched in various states altogether, and they have received a phenomenal response as well. Kingfisher is actually very, very interesting. So Kingfisher has actually caught on to the wit beer train, and they have launched their own Kingfisher Ultra Wit beer, and this has also taken up really well. So what needs to be seen here is while Bira was one of the first people to actually bring in the craft beer wave, but will it be actually be able to retain its market leader position, or will it get sidelined by both an onslaught of the new age brands as well as the incumbents launching variants in the craft beer and the wheat beer segments? Looking at how the performance and the split of Bira goes across states. So primarily East has been a phenomenal year for Bira. So they have grown 162% in East from the last financial year. South they have grown by 51%. Internationally they have done really well. They have launched in multiple new countries. Primarily they have grown in USA, Hong Kong and Singapore. So here I must say that international exposure is also something which Bira is really playing on. So they have launched, I think, close to 9 or 10 countries now. In 2022, they even launched in Norway and I think Sweden. So they launched in two new countries as well. So I think one major growth factor which Bira is going for would be launching in international geographies. West is a difficult market for Bira. So because West is actually home to a lot of new age beer companies as well. And North again is close to 50-55%. So East seems to be a dominant segment where Bira has really scored a lead over its existing players. But across the rest of the parts in India, South and North are close to 50%. But West is somewhere maybe where Bira needs to figure out its strategy a little more deeply. Coming to the valuation, so Bira started its investment out, or Bira scored its last round of $30 million from Kirin Holdings, and this valued Bira at close to a $300 million figure. In the current markets, Bira has close to 44 crore shares outstanding with a face value of 10 per share, and at a valuation of 815 per share, the valuation would come close to a 3600 crore kind of figure. So yeah, I think this allows us to cover the entire journey of Bira. We would pause here a little and maybe take some questions out. Got it. So I think we have the first question here, which is, can we get access to their FY 2021 annual report? Unfortunately, even we don't have access to their annual report, but we do have data from their uh, investor decks. So it's not very helpful in terms of a very deep split, but we can definitely get a deeper understanding from what is available in in the general space. The next question is, what is the share of exports in Bira's annual revenues? So I think we had read some report where it showed that it was close to a 18.5, 19%. But we can get back with the exact figure because it was not available in their latest deck. So this might be a slightly dated data. Bira is a private limited company. According to that, in the unlisted space, there are more than 200 shareholders of Bira. Please explain. So I think, yeah, Bira is still a private limited company. I think the number of shareholders, we are not sure whether it has crossed 200 or whether it is within 200. But I think that is again something which the company has to answer. So possibly we might seek some clarity from the company directly on this. Got it. Makes sense. I think those were the questions which we got on our chat box in the last couple of minutes. Do write into us for. Okay, so there's a one more question from Sindurai Raj. Is the outstanding preference shares which are convertible into equity considered for valuation? Uh, I think no, this is the equity base itself. The preference share conversion will have to be added onto this. So I think they have done a multiple rounds in terms of preference shares as well. The challenge with that particular item is that we do not really have access to their conversion ratios, and which is why we were not able to add it to this analysis itself. There was a, we have a next question. There was a perception that a ROFR clause may be in existence where buyer of unlisted shares may be refused transfer by promoters of the company. Could you confirm? So in our knowledge, there is no ROFR which is applicable right now. And till date, whatever transfers have happened, we've not faced any issue in terms of a non-transference because the demat transfers are free and we've been able to transfer shares for the last couple of years without any hindrance. So I do not foresee any such trouble, but I think if there is a clarification required, we can definitely raise it to the company secretary and get a clarification on the same. We have another question called when do you think Bira will approach break even? It's hard to say. I think in terms of volumes, they have done really well. But I think the challenge with Bira is that they are spending a lot of money on marketing and distribution budgets. So possibly they would have to find a way in which they are able to grow their top line organically without having to keep up such high spends in terms of marketing budgets. And if they are able to do that, I think they will be able to turn profitable. But I do not think that it will happen anytime very soon. So I think it is at least 2 to 3 years away before they actually break even. The next question is what will be the future prospects you are looking for investment purposes? So could you just confirm whether you mean for Bira or in unlisted companies or pre-IPO companies in general? So and I will then take this question again. The next question is, are Bira shares liquid within the unlisted segment? Yes, I think they are fairly liquid. There are a bunch of buyers and sellers there, so we do not find too much trouble in liquidating. It might not be as liquid as the other investments because primarily it is slightly smaller in terms of market cap, but otherwise up till 10, 15, 20 lakhs of investments, we do not find a challenge in liquidating it. The next question is any insights on the company coming for IPO? Hmm. No, not really. So I do not think that the company has given any timelines for an IPO. So from my latest understanding, the IPO is not planned up till the next 2 to 3 years. So possibly if we are looking at an IPO, it will be post 2025. So people possibly getting invested in Bira might either look to get an exit in the unlisted space itself, or if they are looking for an IPO exit, they might have to be invested for a slightly longer time span. The last question from Mr. Natarajan is, have you seen valuations come off for Bira in the last 90 days alongside decline in public markets? Yes, there has certainly been a decline, but the decline is less pronounced if you compare it with the tech offerings. So it has come down from I think a close to 950 level or a 900 level to a 800 and 815 level. So it's close to a 12 to 15% rationalization in pricing. The next question on the docket is what is the market valuation at the current price? Is it worth to invest? Okay, so I think in terms of valuation, like I showed, it is close to a 4,000 crore rupee market cap in terms of equity. However, this does not account for the preferential convertible instruments. And the challenge with calculating the preferential convertible instruments is there isn't enough data available in the public domain for us to give you a figure into how many equity shares will that convert into. So therefore, there is a slight confusion as far as it comes to understanding the valuation. In terms of investing, I think it is see with a company which has a very deep very deeply red bottom line, we find it a little challenging as far as investing goes. Uh, it might be making losses for the foreseeable future, but apart from that, in terms of growth, if it is able to maintain a 40-50% growth over the next 3-4 years, it certainly will be able to pay off its investors well. Yeah. So Mr. Bansal is asking what are the future prospects for investments in terms of pre-IPO. Okay, so I think this is a question in general. So in terms of pre-IPO, I think we have narrowed down a couple of companies which we have covered in a previous section. Uh, Primarily, we are looking at Chennai Super Kings, we are looking at Hexaware Technologies, we are looking at Five Star Business Finance, and we are looking at Orbis Financial Services. So these are the 4 or 5 companies which are primarily looking at in terms of investing. In terms of a detailed analysis of them, we can take it up over a call or over a email. You can reach out to our team and then we can set up a call and discuss this in more depth. Bira, I think we already covered. I think in terms of investment, it is slightly challenging because it's a loss-making company and uh, it has actually spent a lot in sales and marketing to grow its top line. But apart from that, if it is able to maintain its overall growth trajectory, I think it should be a good investment. Will this be a multi-bagger? It's like this. It's very hard to say. I cannot be very certain that this will be a multi-bagger because currently the markets are not very kind to loss-making companies, and therefore you have to be very very cautious before investing into companies where their bottom line is not very secure at the moment. Uh, the next question is, you spoke of change in state mix for protecting margins in the latest year performance. How does Bira's market share stack up versus competition where state regulations are friendly? Example, state taxes are lower. Yeah, perfect. So I think to address this, I think what we got from their investor presentation is that there is a better margin protection which they have received in East per se, because Calcutta as a market has reduced its overall taxes on light beer, and that has immensely benefited Bira and other wheat beer companies. And with respect to southern states, I think it has become a slightly more challenging for beer companies to grow their businesses. Uh, the next question is little off track with Bira. Are there other good unlisted companies which good and offer good investments? So, Mr. Vijay, I think what we prefer right now is companies which are backed by good promoters and have a very stable balance sheet, because the trend from has shifted a little from loss making companies and growth investing to a little bit of a value investing era, wherein if the company is actually able to conduct its business profitably, the market is rewarding it much better than purely growth companies. We've all seen what has happened to Policy Bazaar, Nykaa, Paytm, Zomato in the listed space as well. So right now we would go with companies like Hexaware, which has a very strong bottom line. Companies like Five Star Business Finance, which has a PAT of close to 450 crores. And in the last, so I think Hexaware is a IT firm which has been acquired by Carlyle, and the valuation at which it is available right now, is a significant discount to its earlier valuation. CSK definitely, because the IPL media rights sale has given has ensured that all of the IPL franchisees will have an amazing balance sheet for the next 5 years. Uh, Five Star, because it is one of the most interesting companies who are operating in the NBFC space. So it is offering it is working in a very niche segment wherein uh, it is offering loans to small business owners in small ticket sizes, and they are completely secured. So they have a very low NPA. So these are the 3 4 companies we would recommend to check out and look to build a portfolio in. Taking up the next question, how does Bira serve export markets for fresh from tap beer? Do they plan to set up breweries globally or ship from India? Any plans announced? No, to be honest, we do not have an answer to this. I am not sure how they are planning to address the demand there. They might be shipping from India, or they might be importing from the local breweries and then rebranding also. So we'll have to check on this and get back to you if we are able to get some clarity from the organization. Uh, the next question is, what about TMB coming for an IPO? TMB, I think, will definitely come out with an IPO because they had filed the DRHP, so that shows high level of management intent to come out with an IPO. In terms of where they are, I think they had filed their DRHP about 3.5, 4 months back, and they got a clearance from SEBI just last week. So from now, they would have 6 months to come out with an IPO before their clearance expires. So there might be a scenario where if the markets are okay within the next 6 months, TMB will actually come out with an IPO. Got it. Great. I think we had a long list of questions, but I think we have been able to answer most. Uh, Great. Yeah, I think we are through with the questions as well. Thank you for joining in. Whether you invest or you don't invest, it's Saturday evening is always a good time to have a chilled beer. You take your pick from the numerous flavors offered by Bira or Kati Patang or Kingfisher, and we'll catch you up and we'll take you up in the next couple of weeks with another interesting pre-IPO company. Thank you everyone for joining in. Take care. Cheers.